They laughed at me, they called me strange, but the moment I picked up my violin, everything changed.
They laughed at her. They whispered behind her back. To them, she was just the weird girl. Too quiet, too different, too easy to target. But what none of them knew was that she carried a secret that could silence the entire room with a single note. This isn't just a story about bullying. It's about a transformation that no one saw coming. Stick with me. And if you love powerful, true-to-life stories, make sure to subscribe and share this journey with others. In a small town where everyone seemed to blend into the same rhythm, lived a girl named Alara. She wasn't like the others, and not in the way that drew admiration. While most kids her age were loud, playful, and eager to fit in, Alara was quiet, observant, and carried herself with a kind of stillness that many mistook for weakness. At school, she was the one who often sat alone during lunch, scribbling in a worn-out notebook that no one cared to notice. Her clothes weren't the latest fashion, her hair wasn't styled like the popular girls, and her voice, soft and gentle, was often drowned out by the noise of those who loved being heard. The teachers saw her as a good student, polite, and hardworking, but classmates saw her differently. Strange, awkward, invisible. Those were the unkind labels whispered in the hallways. Alara pretended not to hear, but she always did. At home, however, her world was different. Her mother, a kind woman who worked long hours at a local cafe, always reminded her, "Being different is not a curse, Alara. It's a gift. You'll see one day." Her father had left when she was young, so it was just the two of them, holding on to hope in each other. What no one knew was that Alara's notebook wasn't filled with school notes or doodles. It was filled with music, melodies she imagined in her head, notes she had never played but somehow felt deep inside. She dreamed of touching an instrument, of letting those songs breathe into the world. But dreams, as Alara knew too well, were fragile things in a place where cruelty often spoke louder than kindness. The real sting began one cold Monday morning. Alara walked into class, clutching her notebook a little tighter than usual. She had scribbled down a melody the night before, one that kept her awake until sunrise, and she couldn't stop humming it under her breath. But that small spark of joy didn't last. Sitting behind her was Clara, the self-proclaimed queen of the class. Clara had a sharp tongue and a crowd that loved to echo her every word. When Alara dropped her pencil, Clara picked it up first, waving it in the air like a prize. "Oh, look," Clara smirked. The little ghost girl lost her magic stick. Careful, everyone. She might start casting spells. The room erupted with laughter. Alara's cheeks flushed, but she didn't say a word. She reached out quietly for her pencil, only for Clara to toss it across the room. Another round of giggles followed, but the worst came when Clara's friend snatched Alara's notebook. Flipping through the pages, she read aloud in a mocking voice. "La-da-da, music notes, dreams of being a star. Oh, this is gold. Who does she think she is? Beethoven?" Laughter filled the classroom again. To them, it was entertainment. To Alara, it was humiliation. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor and never come back. Her teacher returned before things could get worse, but the damage was already done. Her precious melodies, the only part of herself she truly valued, had been turned into a joke. That day, Clara didn't just tease Alara, she exposed her secret. And with every whisper that followed in the hallways, it became clear. Alara's love for music had painted a target on her back, but life has a strange way of turning wounds into weapons. And soon, the very thing they mocked her for would become the one thing they could never silence. After that day, the bullying shifted from whispers to open attacks. Every time Alara walked down the hallway, Clara and her friends would hum exaggerated tunes, pretending to play invisible violins. "Play us a sad song, ghost girl," they would shout, their voices echoing as the rest of the class laughed along. At first, Alara tried to ignore them. She kept her head down, clutching her notebook. Tighter each day, but the laughter followed her like a shadow. It wasn't just the teasing. It was the looks, the smirks, the way people would step aside as if she didn't belong in their world. One afternoon in the cafeteria, Clara took it even further. Standing on top of a chair, she mimicked holding a violin, screeching loudly as if playing the worst music ever. "Ladies and gentlemen, presenting Alara's grand concert," she yelled, bowing dramatically as her friends roared with laughter. Even teachers at the far end shook their heads, unsure how to stop it without escalating the scene. Alara sat frozen, her tray untouched. For a moment, she thought about throwing away her notebook forever. What was the point of dreaming when her dreams only made her a joke? But then something unexpected happened. In the corner of the cafeteria, an older student named Marcus, quiet, respected, and known for his skill in the school orchestra, watched Clara's performance with a frown. Unlike the others, he didn't laugh. Instead, he locked eyes with Alara. It wasn't pity. It wasn't mockery. It was something else. Something that almost felt like recognition. That single glance stayed with her longer than the laughter. For the first time, Alara wondered, what if someone out there actually understood her music? But Clara wasn't done. Not yet. She had one more insult planned, one that would push Alara further than she'd ever been pushed before. And that moment was closer than Alara could have imagined. The breaking point came during an assembly a week later. The auditorium was buzzing. Parents, teachers, and students filled the seats for the annual school showcase. Performances of dance, skits, and music were lined up. For most, it was just another event. For Clara, it was an opportunity. As the orchestra finished tuning, Clara leaned toward her friends, whispering just loud enough for others to hear. Imagine if she ever got on stage, the ghost girl and her invisible violin. The giggles spread, cruel and sharp. Alara sat in the back row, wishing she could melt into the seat. She hadn't signed up for anything, but the taunts found her anyway. Clara, spotting her, smirked with wicked delight. And then, as though fate was conspiring, the principal made an announcement. "One of our performers couldn't make it tonight. If anyone would like to step up last minute, the stage is open." The auditorium fell into a hush. Clara's eyes flicked immediately to Alara. "Go on," she whispered mockingly. "Here's your big chance. Show us your talent." Her friends burst into muffled laughter. Alara's heart pounded. She felt trapped between shame and a strange, burning defiance. Her notebook, filled with melodies never heard, sat heavy in her bag. And Marcus, sitting near the orchestra pit, glanced her way once more, as if silently asking, "Will you do it?" The taunts grew louder. Students clapped sarcastically. "Go on, ghost girl. Play us a song." The room buzzed with cruelty. Alara rose. From her seat, the laughter stopped. Nobody expected her to move. Nobody thought she'd actually stand. And as she slowly walked toward the stage, clutching her bag, the entire auditorium leaned in. Was she really going to play? Did she even know how? With every step, the tension thickened. Clara's smirk faltered just slightly, and then Alara reached the stage, placed her bag on the stand, and unzipped it. The audience gasped, because inside wasn't just a notebook. It was a violin. The silence in the auditorium was deafening. Alara's hands trembled as she lifted the violin from her bag. It wasn't shiny or new. It was second-hand, with scratches on its body and strings that had been replaced more times than she could count. But to her, it was priceless. It was her mother's gift, saved up from countless extra shifts at the cafe. Clara let out a loud scoff. "Oh, this is going to be good," she whispered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. A few chuckles spread in the crowd. But Alara didn't flinch. For once, she wasn't listening to them. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and placed the violin under her chin. The bow hovered for a moment, then moved. The first note sliced through the air like light breaking into darkness. Clear, rich, trembling with emotion. It was unlike anything the audience had expected. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Even the teachers froze. The melody flowed, soft at first, then building with intensity, each note weaving into the next like a story without words. Alara poured everything into that performance. Every insult, every lonely lunch, every moment of humiliation, every word her mother had spoken about being different. It wasn't just music, it was her truth. Clara shifted in her seat. The smirk she wore so confidently began to fade. Around her, classmates who once laughed leaned forward, their expressions stunned. For the first time, they weren't mocking. Alara, they were listening. The music swelled, carrying the weight of her pain but also the beauty of her resilience. It filled the auditorium with something unexplainable, a connection that reached beyond words. Parents wiped tears from their eyes. Teachers glanced at each other, awestruck. Marcus, standing by the orchestra pit, smiled knowingly, as if he had seen this moment coming all along. And then, silence. The final note hung in the air, trembling for a heartbeat longer, before dissolving into the stillness of the room. No one moved. For a split second, Alara thought they might laugh again. Her bow lowered, her hands trembling with doubt. But then, the sound of clapping, just one pair of hands at first. Marcus, standing tall, applauding with steady conviction. Then another teacher joined. And then, like a spark catching fire, the entire auditorium erupted in applause. People rose to their feet, cheering, clapping, shouting her name. Ilara! 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 She stood frozen, unable to process it. The same people who had ridiculed her, mocked her, made her feel invisible, were now cheering for her, and in the middle of the crowd, Clara sat motionless, her face pale, her smirk gone. For the first time, she wasn't the center of attention. Alara was. Tears stung Alara's eyes, but she didn't cry. She simply bowed, her heart swelling with a feeling she had never known before, not just pride, but freedom. For once, she wasn't the ghost girl. She was an artist. She was herself. As she stepped down from the stage, Marcus approached, his voice low but firm. Never let them silence you again. You have a gift. Don't hide it. Alara nodded, a smile breaking through her nervousness. That night, she walked home with her mother waiting at the door. When Alara told her what had happened, her mother pulled her into a tight embrace. "See?" she whispered. "Being different is a gift. The world just needed to hear it." And for the first time in her life, Alara believed it too. Alara's story isn't just about a girl who played the violin. It's about something deeper, a reminder of how easily we judge what we don't understand. The very thing she was bullied for, the passion that made her different, became the reason an entire auditorium stood to their feet. How many times in life do we silence ourselves out of fear of what others might think? How many dreams remain, hidden because someone else's laughter felt louder than our own voice? Ilara proved that courage isn't about fighting back with words. Sometimes, courage is simply stepping forward and letting your truth speak for itself. The bullies wanted her to feel invisible, but her music made her unforgettable. Clara's taunts faded into the background, while Alara's performance became a moment no one could erase. That's the power of embracing who you are, even when the world tries to convince you to hide. And maybe that's the lesson for all of us. Being different isn't a weakness. It's the spark that can light up a room, the note that can change. A song, the story that can inspire a stranger. So the next time someone tries to put you down, remember Alara. Remember the girl who turned her pain into music, who transformed her silence into applause. And remember that your voice, whatever form it takes, has the power to shift the entire room. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who might need the reminder that they are more than the labels others put on them. And if you believe in stories that inspire, uplift, and remind us of our strength, make sure to subscribe. Every story here is a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance for light. Because in the end, it's not about the bullies who laugh, it's about the courage to play your song anyway. And when you do, the world will listen.